Now we are recording, so sorry about that. So our agenda for today is what is screencasting, and we're going to compare some static work with screencast, getting started with screencasting, sort of what's next, and then some Q&A. So first, what are screencasts? I keep saying this word, but what is this? So EDUCAUSE defines a screencast as a screen capture of the actions on a user's computer screen with accompanying audio. So if any of you have joined us previously, you know that we have our recordings. That's a screencast. Anything that records anything that's on the computer screen that allows us to add voice to it, where we can show the actions of our mouse, that's all a screencast. And so what I like about screencast is that it actually captures this multi-modes of communication. And I'll share with you what that means, in that students can add diagrams, they can add visuals, they can solve with equations, but it also adds that added layer of verbal communication so that we have additional data that we can analyze kids' understanding and mathematical thinking. And again, so verbal, we have written notations. Also, there's some screencasts that have these little laser pointers. And so when kids use the laser pointers, they're actually using some nonverbal communication as well. So they're using this movement as a way to express their understanding or to even highlight certain areas of their screen. And what we know as math educators is that when students make connections among multiple ideas in multiple forms, so when they're connecting the verbal to the written to the nonverbal communication, they demonstrate and they develop a deeper understanding of the mathematics. So again, so it allows for all of these multiple modes of communications. So rather than me just telling you what a screencast is, let's check it out. Let's see what it is. Let's see an example of one. And so here's the first thing that I'm going to play is I'm going to play a student, and her name is Beatrice. Beatrice was a second grade student in a dual immersion program. And so she's going to solve the following problem. So Sam had 32 balloons for his party. He puts them in 4 groups with the same number of balloons in each group. So how many balloons are in each group? And I will say that because she was in dual immersion program, I asked her if she wanted to solve the problems in English or in Spanish. She said she wanted to answer the questions in Spanish. So I wrote them all out for her. She decided that she was going to describe her understanding in English, but I wanted to just share her work. This is sort of her final product. And I'd like for you to take a moment and maybe in the chat, write or describe, what do you think she did to solve this problem? What might she understand? What are some things that you notice about her work that she has here?
I noticed the little dots, like she went back to go count them.
Yes, so thank you for whoever unmuted yourself. Thank you so much. Yeah, so we have some dots here that we can see that she went back and she counted to double check her counts. Anybody else like to share either in the chat, well, verbally? That would be awesome.
So she made 32 marks and she attempted to divide them in quarters.
Okay.
So she had the right concept, she just miscounted, putting one extra one in the bottom and not to the top. She could have just simply circled one of those lines and moved to show that she'd moved it to the top. But she understands the concept of dividing 32 by 4, the concept of division. She just miscalculated, I think.
All right. So what's really great about this is that, when we look at static work, student work samples, we make a lot of assumptions about what kids understand or what kids did. And so what I love about screencasts is that we're able to actually see what they did in the moment. And so let's check it out. Let's see what she actually did. So I'm going to escape out of full screen here. Let's see. I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment. I see also lovely chats that you see that she used some tick marks, that there's like these 4 squares that she segmented into. So absolutely. So I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to give this a try. Please bear with me as we try to make sure that this all works. So I'm going to share. So hopefully on your screen you see this idea of this problem. And so now I'm going to play it and we're going to listen to what she says.
So 4 groups he wants. 32 balloons in total. So I might do 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I'm going to make the total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 29, 30, 31, 32. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. 31, 32. I'm all done.
All right. Oh. I have to say that that is one of my absolute favorite videos, because I just love when she gets to the end and she just hits 30 and there's like this kind of pause of like, uh-oh, what do I do next? And so, so any thoughts, or anybody like to share sort of your thoughts or ideas of what she did to solve that problem, or what you noticed?
She started off by first doing groups of 4, counted them up, and then she wanted us to just tally mark each one from there because probably she couldn't count in higher groups.
Absolutely. Yeah, what's really amazing and lovely about her strategy is that she started off by putting groups of 4, which is actually a really sophisticated strategy, that she just didn't start dividing each things out by 1, that she actually put those groups of 4. And where she kind of went where she made her mistake was when she went back to count how many she had. She went 1, 2, 3, 4. She skipped count, went up to 8. And then from there she said 8, 11, 12, 13, 14. So she had this small miscount. If she didn't have that miscount, she actually would have gotten the correct answer, because she was kind of then from there went and put an individual tally until she made or what she thought she had 32. And then what I really love is then at the end, she's just like, oh my goodness, what do I do? I'm just gonna add 2 there to make sure that I have 32. And she didn't go back to check to make sure that each group had the same number in each group. And what I love about this, again, so when I interviewed this particular student, she told me that to be good at math, it meant that you have to be fast. And so it was quite interesting that for her, quickness meant that she was good at math. And so I feel like when she came to that kind of, oh my goodness, I only have 30, what am I going to do? Let me just quickly finish it and then I'm done and I'm good. And she proudly pronounces at the end, I'm all done. So it was a really wonderful strategy. So I saw some questions of people asking what program we use to make this. And this particular program is on a tablet on the iPad called Explain Everything. And I'm going to share with you a variety of programs that you can use to make screencasts, and the links are going to be there. And so just know that we've got you covered on that. So it's going to be so we're going to make sure that we do that. All right, let me go back to, let me see here, to sharing my screen. Okay. All right, so I just want to say a little bit about the beauty of engaging with technology in our schools, is that we really want to be able to not just use technology for technology's sake, but that we really want to provide opportunities that are going to enhance the learning. And so this is a framework called the SAMR model, and not that you have to memorize this or anything like that, but what I like to show this for teachers is that when there's lots of ways that we can just substitute technology for the real thing, right? So like there's not, rather than, you know, reading a book, paper book, we can read an ebook. There may be some added functionalities, but if we're just using it just as a different way to read, then that's what we would call the substitution level. But when we're engaging kids with technology, we really want to think about how we can, you know, allow kids to create tasks or do things that they wouldn't be able to do without the technology. And so I just wanted to put that here for you to sort of think about when we're engaging kids on this online learning. It's not ideal that we would want to do this perhaps, but maybe we can think about ways that we could take advantage of some of this technology and engage kids in activities that maybe they wouldn't have been able to do prior in the first place. And I will say that I think something that Screencast allows us to do as well is to provide access and equity to the mathematics. And so I just wanted to share this quote that classroom environments that foster a sense of community allow students to express their mathematical ideas with norms that expect students to communicate their mathematical thinking to their peers and teacher, both orally and in writing. Using the language of mathematics positively affect participation and engagement among all students. And so I really do think that allowing students to create these screencasts adds that voice, and it allows us to value and honor kids' mathematical thinking and voices in our classrooms and share their mathematical thinking. So I think it's a really important for us to engage. So getting started with screencasting. So what do we have to make sure that we're doing? So one thing we need to probably think about are what problems or tasks are best to use when engaging students in screencasting. And so a couple things we want to think about is we want to think about providing multiple entry points or allowing for multiple ways to solve problems. We also want to either provide or encourage students to use multiple representations, right? So that idea of providing audio, voice, providing drawings, diagrams, pictures, it's really important because it allows kids to really share what they know using the resources that they have. And we want to encourage reflection on the strategy. So we want to encourage students to explain what they did. And also we perhaps want to pose problems that are familiar context to students so that they're able to, so they're not sort of flustered with the technology and then, oh my goodness, I have to add, do this new task. So maybe starting off with tasks that they're familiar with and then moving on from there. So what I wanted to do is I actually wanted for us to engage in an activity. And why I'm doing this is I wanted to provide us, in order to create screencasts, kids need something to write on, to draw, or to represent their understanding. And so I wanted to share this free not a website, it's an app from Google. It's called Google Jamboard. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this. It actually just came out probably in December. And what it is, it's sort of this cross between a whiteboard and Google Slides. And so we are actually going to engage in this activity. But before we do that, so we're going to engage in the Jamboard, and what you're going to do is you're going to go to this link and you're going to engage in a dot talk. So some of you may be familiar with dot talks, which is where you just have these dots on the screen and you just decide how many dots are on the screen and how did you see those dots. So you're going to find your grade level. Sorry, there's a typo here because I have I've created slides for preschool up through 5th grade. I have a middle school and high school slide. Those of you that are resource teachers or TOSAs, there's a slide for you. And those of you that are administrators, there's also slides for you. And what I would like for you to do is to share how many dots you see and how did you see them. And if you notice here on my Google Slides, you see that this is underlined. And why did I do that? One of the reasons why I did this is that you see that the directions are written in English. Many of you have students that are English language learners and maybe need some extra support. And so what I wanted to share with you is that Google Translate also has the options for you to provide translations to your students. So if you click on this particular link, which Dr. Hargis had added the link to the chat, if you'll notice, it'll take you directly to Google Translate. I've inputted the directions here, and I I've put that in there and it's automatically translated. Right now it's in Spanish. You can change it to Arabic. You can actually change it to a variety of different languages. If you just click down here, these are all of the different languages that it will be translated into. What's also really lovely about this is that there's this little speaker and you can actually listen to the directions being read in that particular language. And so I'm going to, if you give it a try, I'm going to try it, see if it works for you.
Participará en una charla de
Did you
puntos.
hear that?
Encuentra tu nivel de grado y comparte cuántos puntos viste y cómo los viste.
So I don't know about you all, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Again, it does it, and we started playing around with lots of different languages, and it speaks it in any of the different languages. And so what's really lovely then is once you've put your directions here, you just copy this link to the Google Translate. You can go back to your slides, and then you can add a link here, and you can add the link for the students so they can access that and then listen to the directions. So I wanted to share that, and just know that in the Google Slides, in the speaker's notes, so I'm in presentation mode, which I'm going to go ahead and escape out of presentation mode. But if you scroll down to the bottom here, I have actually, excuse me, sorry. I have too many things open on my screen. Down here on the bottom, there's actually instructions on how to add those Google Translate to your slides. So I just wanted to share that with you. So all of this, sorry, I've kind of long-winded, but I just wanted to share that resource with you all because I thought that was quite fabulous. So
Melissa, there's one question about the other languages that you can offer.
Yes, so it looks like if we go back to the other languages, there's quite a few here. Actually, not quite a few, there's actually quite a lot. So we can change it into Spanish. We've got Chinese here. We have Russian, Hmong. We have French. It seems like many of the languages that perhaps we've got in our schools and districts perhaps are here. So I see that somebody's raising their hand. So Colin, would you like to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is totally awesome. My question was, could we have English, Spanish, and Vietnamese all in one section? Because I see you just have English to Spanish. Could it be English, Spanish, and Vietnamese? Could you add that?
So let's see. I'm not sure if I can add it, but I know that here I can go ahead and if I wanted to change it to Vietnamese. And what's really nice is that once you've added it and you have that link, the original directions that you posted are there. And so the kids can actually go and switch to whichever one they would like to. And so we can kind of listen.
Bạn sẽ tham gia vào một dot talk, tìm cấp lớp của bạn và chia sẻ bao nhiêu chấm bạn đã thấy và cách bạn nhìn thấy chúng.
So maybe that, I'm not sure about the Vietnamese translation, but I know the Spanish was pretty spot on. But yeah, so I think that perhaps you can work with your students to switch it to whichever language would be helpful for them.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Glad that you found that helpful. All right, so glad that you all were able to give that a try and to check it out. And so how about we go ahead and give this a try. So for the Jamboard, so there's about a little less than 200 of you. So we're gonna give this a try and hopefully Google does not crash on us. So if you will, Dr. Hargis is going to post the Jamboard link on here. And so if you'll go ahead and go on there and find your grade level. And the way you find your grade level is up at the top. You just kind of can scroll over. And you can kind of, I did two screens for each grade level, just so that if so that we weren't, hey, there's people already on here. Yes. All right, first grade, awesome. So people are adding Post-it notes. You can draw with the pen. You can feel free to add circles. So find your grade level and go ahead and try. Yes, fourth grade, I see 8 total. I saw 3, 3, and 2. So think about how many dots you see. Oh, I love it. In 5th grade, we've got somebody drawing. Yes. And what's awesome is that, again, we can all kind of join in and see how we're doing this. So feel free to take some time. Oh, yay, we've got some TOSAs on here. Oh, this is super fun. Lovely. So I'll give you just some time to engage in the Jamboard. See, so some people are saying that it only goes to the Jamboard. All right, let's see. So so I'm hearing that that's what it does. Just click on, okay. So some people can't exit, I'm sorry. So if we try this link that Dr. Lamb just posted, if you can, hopefully, let's see.
It says that there's too many people trying to access it.
Ah, okay. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. So it looks like maybe there might be a limit to the amount of people that we are on Jamboard. So this is fabulous. So I'd like to say that that this is a new website that we've been trying, and so we didn't know how much we could try to push. So this is something perhaps that maybe not everybody is able to access, or maybe your districts, it seems like the domains, some of the district domains aren't allowing you to try. Maybe, yeah, so somebody asked if it would be helpful to close out a Jamboard tab after you've written. Feel free to do so. So if you've written your thing, you can go ahead and go. And then I see that some in LA that students aren't allowed to use, they can't use Jamboard. So we'll talk about some more other options perhaps. I guess what I wanted to show with this one is that it was an opportunity for multiple people to join in and practice and share their thinking. And so what's really nice about, and how does this connect to screencasting, is that what I like about screencasting is that you can have students create their own screencast, or you can have students co-construct ideas and a screencast together in a group. And so in order to do that, there needs to be some sort of a app or space where kids can all come together and practice. And so I thought this could be one particular opportunity, but it looks like, it's not gonna work for everybody. But again, so this is just one way that you can have a space. If you saw, I was able to import a screen or an image of the dots, and then you're able to come and kind of and draw on here. And so thanks those of you who are continuing to try to get on. I really appreciate that. And so what's nice is that we get, all right. Thanks for your persistence, everyone, and giving it a try and trying it out. I really appreciate that. So I'll come back to our presentation mode. So that was just one sort of an option that you can have. But what I wanted to share is that when we engage in screencasting, especially on PCs and Macs, there needs to be, students need access to some sort of a space where they can draw or they can write. So those of you that were here and were joined us for our previous two sessions that I did, we looked at some virtual manipulatives, and some of those virtual manipulatives allow for kids to draw and work with the manipulatives. So that's another place that you can look at if the Jamboard doesn't work for you. And so they need a space to be able to write and share their thinking, but then they also need access to be able to record their screencasts. And so for PCs, here's a list of lots of different programs and apps that will allow you to video your screen. And many of these are all free. I will say that Screencastify is free, but it only allows for about 5 minutes worth of recording for each screencast. So in the notes section under in the presentation mode, there is a link to Screencastify as well as a code. Because of COVID-19, they are allowing for teachers and anybody that uses that code to get a full year worth of free recordings, unlimited recordings. And so just know that after the year, they will charge you. So you might want to delete it and get rid of it after that. Other options include if you're using mobile technology. So if you're looking at iPads, these are some options as well. Show Me Educreations. These are apps that allow for kids to create screencasts, and they have the whiteboard already in the app. So they open it up, there's the whiteboard, and they just hit record, and that's where they begin. And the one that we saw the child use was Explain Everything. This one does charge, so just be aware of that. And I've also heard that some districts are using Seesaw, and Seesaw allows students to take pictures of items and create little videos as well. So that's just something to think about when you're creating these screencasts. So when kids start to create their screencasts, some of the things we need to really think about is, are they going to solve the problem? Are they going to do the recordings as they solve the problem? This is sort of a think aloud. Or are they going to solve the problem and then explain to you how they solve the problem? And so you get different things, different data out of kids when you figure out if they solve it, if they record as they solve or after they solved. So if they are as they're solving the problem, this documents how students process the information. It captures their mistakes, as we saw with Beatrice, where she had that little mistake in her counting. It includes, their erasures and also their false starts. So if they started doing something and then they kind of fixed it and then went on to the correct answer, it captures all of that in the moment. If we record it after they've solved the problems, then it gives this sort of retrospective of account of what they did. And a lot of times kids will censor themselves or kind of really think about it. So it gives them this idea, this opportunity to metacognitively reflect on the problem solving process. And what ends up happening sometimes is that kids will sort of take on this teaching persona and start to say do you understand? Or this is what I did and this is why I did it. And so it really empowers them to be the teacher and to take on these different ideas. So now I'd like to share another video. And so this video comes from my colleague, Dr. Molly Applegate, and it's from a kindergarten student, Caden, and he's solving a join result to unknown story problem. So the problem is 7 lions sat on the grass under the tree, and 4 more lions walked over. So how many lions are on the grass now? And so what I'd like for you to think about is, what kinds of questions might you have for Caden? And feel free to write your questions in the chat. What I like about what Molly did also, Dr. Applegate, excuse me, is that she took a picture of the question stem and she uploaded that onto her iPad, which was, she also used the Explain Everything app. And depending on the child, she just wrote in the numbers that she wanted the child to solve. And so there was this picture and then the child could write on top of the picture. So I'm going to share with you this particular video. And so what kinds of questions might you have for Caden? And so I will say that he solved it. It was about 18 seconds of kind of silence. And then this is where we pick up in the conversation.
11.
11, how did you get that?
I used my hands.
You used your, I didn't even see them, they're underneath the table. Tell me about it. Can you tell me about how you solved it?
So I did 7.
Okay.
And I did 8, 9, 10, 11.
Ah, counting with your fingers. Can you write me out the number sentence that represents that problem? Do you know what a number sentence that would be? Do you guys talk about the language number sentence at all in school? No? Oh, well then that doesn't make any sense to you. Don't worry about it at all. Okay, so you got 11. Yeah? Okay. Do you ever do drawing in school? Like where you draw pictures? Yeah. Okay. How could you draw this as pictures? Could you draw it as pictures to solve it?
Hand, I can write a hand.
Oh, okay, great. Oh, I love this. Go ahead. I'm excited. That's a good looking hand. So how are you going to use it?
7. So 7, 8, 9, 10.
Wow. So there are now 11 lions sitting on the grass. Awesome.
Those little marks are the lions.
You're right. Your little marks are the lions. Okay.
All right. So, so I think that it was, so some people are asking, so how did you know to stop at 11? Any other thoughts or questions about Caden and how he solved that problem? Or maybe what questions would you ask him, or are you interested in asking him? Or anything else that stood out to you? Is there another way that you could solve it? Yeah, so we can ask him, there's some other ways that he can solve it. Why did you start with 7? That's a really great question. So asking him to think about that. He's counting on, what did you write? Why did you start writing the numbers instead of drawing more fingers? Yeah, I think it was really lovely that what I wanted to share this was that a lot of times kids have, these young children use their fingers. And so even though they use their fingers, he did a really nice way of representing that on the screen. And so he just traced his little hand on the screen. And so I think that was a really great set of questions that Molly asked him. And so one of the things that you might see is that Molly was there when the student solved the problem. And so one thing we can ask maybe parents to do is if they can be there with their child as they solve these problems, and perhaps ask certain questions. And you may ask, Melissa, what kinds of questions might we be able to ask? Well, in the Google folder, there is another folder that has different resources of questions that you can pose or you can send to parents, and so that they can engage kids in asking these questions. And what I love about it's so important for us to ask questions. And really it doesn't, well, it does matter what kinds of questions we ask. We really want to be sure that we're posing questions that build off of what children have already done. And so, so just providing these opportunities or these stems for parents to get started is really important. But as I mentioned, Molly was there as she was interviewing Caden. I was not there. I was sort of standing away from Beatrice as she solved the problem. So there's lots of different ways that we can engage kids when they're solving and creating these problems. So just know that you'll get different types of information based on what you're doing. And even when you're still there with, maybe working with kids, maybe you'll still have other questions that you'd like to ask and kind of, go back and reflect upon. All right, so I'm gonna go back to our presentation. All right. So one thing to think about is as we're engaging kids in creating screencasts, as teachers, we can gather a lot more in-depth information about kids' thinking, again, because we have these multiple data points that we can draw upon. And we really want to position children as mathematical thinkers and sense makers. And there's something about adding voice to students, student work that's just so much more powerful. And again, these videos then allow us to understand and to reflect on student thinking. One thing that's nice for kids is that they are able to use multiple ways to solve and to represent their answers. They can use multiple resources. If we've got children that speak different languages, they can speak that language to explain themselves. They can use virtual manipulatives to solve these problems. And what it does also is that there's this creativity. They can be creative, and so they can do the mathematics in ways that make sense to them. And one thing, again, we want to encourage that that explaining and for them to explain their thinking to others. And so so I'm aware of time, so I'm going to keep going. I might come back to this one, but I do want to say that problems that that students can enter and reason about at multiple levels can accommodate a wide range of learning and cultural backgrounds. And as teachers, we need to explore innovative ways in which we can have students use technology to describe their mathematical thinking and to collaborate with classmates. And so, I tried the failed attempt at trying to, have us collaborate on the Jamboard, but I think that if we didn't have so many people and with your own students, that's a nice place where they can come together to explain their thinking, and then they could create a screencast all together. So I wanted to spend some time for us to think about some questions about implementation. So this was sort of this really brief introduction to screencasting. So some questions that I have for you to sort of think about and maybe we can discuss is, how do you think students will engage in screencasting? What questions do you have or anticipate students having when implementing? What do you do when a student gets stuck or says the wrong answer in the screencast? And what are some ways that you can use screencasting in the classroom? So I'm going to kind of stop my sharing here, and I think this will be a nice place for us to think about what do you think, does anybody have anything that they'd like to share, or kinds of any questions either about answering those or about the screencast that you'd like to share? So I do see a hand up. So if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I was wondering, I see that I'm assuming the teachers are using Zoom, and are the kids sharing their screens by making them the host, or are they using one of those apps that you talked about previously?
So great question. So they can do it different ways. So one thing is that kids can share their screen to create the screencast, or if kids have access. So I'm not quite sure what grade level you're working with, but maybe if they're a little bit older, was it third or fourth? Fourth grade. So perhaps in fourth grade, and I'm not sure if they have their own Zoom accounts or not. Do they have their own Zoom accounts? Yeah, so actually if they have their own Zoom accounts, they can actually sign into Zoom. They can go to start their own meeting, and then they can record their own screen from the Zoom. And so they can either save it to the cloud or they can save it to their own desktop, and then they can share that link with the teacher or share that file with the teacher, either through Google or emailing it to them. So there's different ways. And actually I've done a lot of screencasting with Zoom, and I actually really like it. It's pretty simple. So I think that that's something that you might, that could be done, definitely. Did that get to your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, but they can also, like if the teacher wanted to create a class screencast, the teacher could give access to the kids for them to share their screen, and the teacher can record the session as well and post that for other kids. Yeah, thanks for being here. All right, Bernadette.
I was thinking, I'm not sure how the access you have in the classroom, whether it's individual on iPads and everything, but if anything, maybe during math rotations, so you can kind of check in on students, so they kind of turn in their screencast and them explaining how they did it, so you can really verify that they're working on their work, how they're doing it, and catch any misconceptions, because they're saying it verbally and you're seeing it at the same time.
Absolutely. And I think that I've worked with some teachers, and sometimes so I did this for a research project, and you gather so much data. And so one of the things that I wondered was, could you perhaps maybe throughout the week, you know, maybe allow a certain amount of kids to record screencasts and then you watch it, or so perhaps by the end of the week everybody has been able to share. Or I like that idea of definitely maybe having centers or rotations and having kids kind of rotate through and creating those. One thing you might also think about is to try to maybe create not maybe rules, but maybe some characteristics with your kids. Like, what do we want to make sure that our screencasts have, and how long do we want to make sure that they are? Because when I did my research, some kids could, you know, create a 30-second screencast, and I had one that she was very verbose and she would spend 8 minutes, you know, explaining her thinking. And so that could be sort of like, oh my goodness, you know, can you imagine if all of your students created these 8-minute videos? So maybe you try to, you know, let's try to keep them to 2 to 3 minutes. Maybe we want to make sure that we draw a picture, or that we have multiple representations. So this could be something that as a class we can create, and sort of the rules of creating screencast, and then we can share that in that sense. Any other questions? I see that.
Sorry. There's a few more questions in the chat.
Okay.
One is about if you want students to collaborate and share strategies in class, can they record a comment on each other's screencasts? Yeah, so
I believe that there is a way to do that. I'm sort of, I'm coming at a blank right now, but I do think that or it just came in my head, is that perhaps maybe they can create little screencasts of each other's. So like maybe one student will create a screencast, they you know, once the students will watch it, and then maybe they can create their own little screencast replying to the other student. I think that's a nice way to having some sort of dialogue and conversations with kids, as that maybe they do so outside of, like, maybe asynchronously, so that they have the time to reflect and really think about how they would respond. So that's sort of off the top of my head. I do believe that if you have sort of these mobile apps, that there's an opportunity for kids to be able to kind of add on to the end of the original screencast. But I say that, but I'm not you'd have to double check me on that. So I'm not quite sure. Any other thoughts or ideas or questions?
There's also a question about whether there's a job aid or something that you give to parents and students about how to use screencasts, or maybe the particular app that you want them to use.
Good question. So I haven't created a job aid. There are, if we go back to the slide that listed all of the different screencast apps and websites, most of them tend to have little videos on how to create screencast or what to do. So you might want to check out some of those videos and maybe pass those on to parents so that they can watch. Or even you can, if you have a special preferred app or website that you'd like to use, perhaps you can create a screencast and sharing it with parents. I think that the students would love to see your voice and see how, you know, sort of what's the activity and how are we going to engage in that. I think that might be a nice way to do that. Let's see. I see can you group students in a breakout room and have them share Jamboard as a group? Yes. So we were actually thinking about this morning, in that if you would like to use Zoom and create breakout groups, you can either create separate Jamboards, or you can create one Jamboard with different frames and maybe say, you know, label each group and say each group has their own frame that they can work on. So there's definitely lots of different ways that you can use the Jamboards. And what's, again, really nice is that they all can come together and create that Jamboard for whatever task that you have. Let's see. Does Google have an app where, where videos can be uploaded and commented on? Carol, not that I know of. I'm not quite sure. I know that you said Sydme, but Sydme is a paid version, so I'm not quite sure if they would have that or not. Thanks for those that are saying they use Seesaw. That's really awesome. Class Dojo.
Several have suggested Flipgrid.
Flipgrid is another one, yep, that you can definitely do. I know that Flipgrid uses the camera and the kids can explain. I'm not sure if, and please, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm wondering if Flipgrid can record your computer screen. I was wondering about that. So I think I'm hearing maybe a nose on those. I'm not quite sure about that. Yeah. All right. So, oh, somebody says maybe yes. All right. So let me. So there's a couple of extra things that for the session. So I'm going to go back to the session real quick here and share my screen, and then again we'll have more questions at the end. So just a summary is, again, so for us to consider ways that we can engage students in explaining their thinking, or as some of you mentioned, replying to or explaining the reasoning of others. So if students can create a screencast and then other students can watch it and then reply to them or have this sort of asynchronous conversations. Again, students might need to be trained, might need training on creating screencasts. When I did my research, I spent like the first session that I met with students, I went over some of the different tools and options that were available on the different apps. And so that could be something that you do with the kids as well. So they might need some extra training before they go ahead and get started. Or again, maybe you consider creating a screencast about screencasts and share that with parents for them to be able to engage in these ideas. And again, this idea of co-constructing these characteristics of what should be included in student screencasts can be important as well. And so I just wanted to sort of end with just thanking you all for being here today, that we have a couple of extra math project events. These are mostly for grades 6th through 12th grade teachers. So if you know of any, or if you are in that bracket, we have some extra sessions coming up. We have one tomorrow about using Desmos activity builder to incorporate math language routines in remote learning. And then next week we have one about using online math videos that have students talking to each other. And both of those are free, and this is the website. Our math project website has more information about those sessions. And also, if you'd like to check out some of our past sessions, there's some recordings as well. And so I will say thank you so much for joining us. There is an evaluation form if you'd like to give us some feedback on how today went. Again, here's my website as well. If you would like to, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to send me an email. I'd be happy to chat with you and think about ways that you can engage your kids in online learning. And so we have some extra time for questions. So I'll go ahead and I'll stop sharing my screen here and just ask if anybody has any additional questions that you'd like to ask. Feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself, do whatever you'd like so that we can engage in a conversation. And thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
It also looks like some people offered some additional tips around Flipgrid. It sounded like they've added some functionality recently. And so that was sort of an interesting find, I think, for some people.
Awesome. I'll definitely have to check it out more to see what they've got. Thanks so much, everybody, for those of you that are signing off. Really appreciate you all being here. And if anybody, I'll be around. I'm here if you have any extra questions. I'm glad that you all found, hopefully, the information informative. Really appreciate it. All right, okay, there's a question. Is it possible to share a couple of videos with students to show teachers what a great resource screencasts have to offer? Let's see. So sorry, is it more like you would like to have links to the videos that we shared, or kind of a follow-up question to that? So maybe to rewatch some of them. So we can, if you send me an email, in my email address, I'd be happy to share with you some thoughts and ideas about some of the different videos that we can share or and look at and help you with to share with other people. Definitely. Will my slides be on Schoology? So the slides are on the Google folder, and so Dr. Hargis is going to paste the link on here so that you are more than welcome to check out the slides and access them in any way that you'd like. I'm so glad that people are excited about using this with their kids, and I think it's just really lovely just connecting with students and listening to their voices and how they're thinking about mathematics is really amazing. And so yeah, definitely. Any other questions or thoughts? We really appreciate you all being here today. Please feel free to check out our Google folder with resources. Thanks, Alec, for being here. Thanks so much, everyone. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have. I'm going to go ahead and stop the Zoom recording.